I want to say a happy asexual week to our asexual listeners. And you know what? Our aromantic listeners as well. We'll throw them in there. The whole ace spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or aces.
Enjoy your life and you matter.
That's right. You do. And if you don't know much about asexuality or aromantics or ace people, do some research. Get caught up. Google is easy.
You know how to use it. If you're listening to this podcast, you know how to Google things. So don't fucking bullshit. Don't lie. Don't say, oh, I don't know how to look things. Oh, I never knew about that. Mm-hmm. You have fucking Google. Your phone's in your hand for fucking 50% of the day. Don't be a fucking bullshitter.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's no excuse for not knowing something now. If you can turn around, even my father-in-law, who's an old white guy in his late 50s. Shut up. Turns around and can be like, hey, Alexa, play denim music. So he could turn around and be like, hey, Alexa, explain asexuality to me.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're looking for if you have like a Google Home or even an Alexa, you can just say, okay, Google, play the Your Queer Story podcast. And my phone's about to start doing it now.
Yep, there we go, because Google's always listening. Okay. When you're asking Google to play our podcast, just go right over to the Florence Nightingale episode, and then we'll tell you about asexuality.
If you don't want to read, you can listen to us tell you pretty much about anything in the world. Yeah. Honestly, at this point.
Yeah.
You want us to cover World War II? Let us know. You want us to cover World War I? Let us know. You want us to cover anything? Let us know. Because guess what? Whatever happened in the whole world, there was queer people there.
Oh, yeah.
If there's a topic that you're interested in, email us, tweet us. Message us on YouTube, message us on Facebook, message us on Instagram, call us.
Okay, Paul's just giving out his phone number.
Yeah, just get in touch with us.
Yeah, get in touch and we'll cover any subject. Because like Paul said, queer history is wherever any history is. And we'll dig it up and we'll talk about it. I mean, we've talked about all kinds of stuff.
I feel like because we've been getting a little bit of listenership in Mongolia, we should do like a special episode for that.
There you go. Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Pull some Mongolian queer history up. Yeah, I'm all for that.
So what'd you do this week?
What is this week? I just worked a lot. I'm already setting Christmas, so
God. Yeah. But I will tell you, I went into Burlington. We were looking for clothes, and they had like the Christmas stuff out, and I spent like a half an hour just walking through looking all this
because
stuff.
The whole time that I'm setting Christmas, people are coming in, they're grumbling like, there's stupid Christmas stuff. I can't believe.
But at the same time,
and as they're rummaging through my Christmas stuff, as they're picking things up and putting ornaments in their basket, they're like, I can't believe that they have the audacity to set Christmas this early. And are these lights on sale, by the way? Like, okay. So whatever. Every year it's the same. I'm immune to it now, but I have been working a lot and of course working out.
Yeah, we've been doing really good. Oh, I need to use your little thing today. Check where I'm at, the little fat thing.
Oh yeah, you do. You need to measure your fat.
Measure my fat, keeping it up, keeping it on track.
We're tracking our fat percentage, which by the way, I do want to say as a disclaimer, your BMI or your fat percentage, it can be helpful for tracking, but also it can be incredibly that doesn't have to do with whether or not you're healthy. And I was actually reading an article today shared by someone who was talking about how the BMI is really rooted in racism and just a lot of a whole like fat phobia and such like that. So you can be a healthy person and not fit the BMI. The Rock doesn't fit in a BMI scale, but it can also help with other goals. So you can use it, but don't set your whole life around it.
I think it's good to just look at everything and monitor everything, but like... So when I left high school, I weighed 235, and then I dropped down to 146. That was my lowest. And I'm at about 160 now, which is a pretty healthy weight. Technically, according to all the stats, I'm still overweight. Yeah. But by like 5 pounds or something. But I'm like, I mean, overall, if you consider where I was to where I'm at now, I'm extremely healthy. So you have to remember, like, just because you're starting somewhere or just because you're not all the way to the perfect spot yet, like... Take everything into consideration when you're looking at the numbers. Yeah. Don't beat yourself up.
Exactly. And don't compare yourself to other people. And there's like, it's just what makes you feel good. Like, I don't feel good when I'm at what's considered the healthy weight. I don't feel good about myself. I don't like the way I look.
Because I was actually thinking that. I'm like, I want to be at the healthy weight. But then I'm like, well, I don't know. I've been building muscle. Like, I don't want to just get like, I don't want to get rid of the muscle and get scrawny just to.
Exactly. I like to be a little heavier. I just feel like it makes me look more masculine. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy with that. So, but you do have to take care of yourself. And now we're turning into like a fitness.
I know.
And so this week on your fitness story, which will be our next podcast, but whatever. That was all. Where did that come from? Because I said the BMI.
You said what, I asked you what you were doing this week.
Oh yeah, because it's just good. Yeah, because we're tracking our.
We are
diet.
really good at talking about any subject.
We can talk about anything. That's why we're best friends. I think that's why. Anyways, so yeah, but that's all I did. I did my diet and my exercise, and I worked.
This was actually for me the first week that I didn't do my diet very good, because I mean I'm not specifically doing a diet. I'm just kind of eating healthy. I've learned over the years how to eat healthy from when I lost all that weight. But this week, I don't know if it was. I mean, we did Fall Fest stuff yesterday.
Yeah.
What was today? Yeah, yesterday we went into like Massachusetts to do some fall stuff, and I had like a beer and a drink, and I haven't been drinking. Yeah. And I had a burger, and then I had some brownies, and then I had pizza today. Yeah. So it's not like it was and then I did have. I kind of ate bad this week. I wouldn't say it was excessively bad, but it was definitely like a cheat week.
Well, you had things, and that's another point of like if your diet controls your whole life and you can't enjoy yourself,
I
then
said,
what is the point of that?
Because I told myself, I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this is a long-term thing. This isn't like I'm not trying to just do a quick fix or drop 30 pounds in 30 days or any of that crazy stuff. So I was like, I can enjoy myself this week. Yeah. And you know what? If I put on a pound or something, I'll get rid of it next week. Like,
yeah, fitness is a journey, and it looks different for everybody. Just like queerness, queerness is a journey, and it looks different for everybody. But yeah.
So also for me this week, besides all of that stuff, after the fall stuff was over, we went to David's hometown to drop his brothers off, and he wanted to show his brothers there was like a small waterfall. There was a small waterfall in town, in the woods. So we went back there, and then for some reason David decided we were all going to jump across the fucking river, and of course, guess who fucking falls in?
Wow.
And then my feet are completely soaked. I just land feet first into this fucking river, and David's like, "Oh my god, are your feet wet?" And of course, it's fucking fall. I'm cold. And I'm like, no, my fucking feet are dry right now, David. What the fuck do you think? So then we walked back, and it was like a good 15-minute walk. My feet just soaking wet.
Squishy, squish all the way back.
And it was like the side of a river for part of it, so it was like slanted, and I'm like struggling to maintain my balance.
It sounds like a great time.
Right? That's exactly how I want to spend my fucking afternoon. And I was also drunk walking through there so it was like made it even worse. This was such a great idea, hon. I'm so glad we did this.
It sounds like your relationship resentment is bubbling up, Paul.
No comment.
He's not going to listen to this anyways.
No, he won't.
Right?
I wasn't mad. I wasn't mad at him. I was like, I was frustrated that I fell. I wasn't even frustrated that we were in the woods, but it came out that I was because I was mad at myself for falling. Yeah.
Well, it's not like
but
you're
also
the most coordinated person.
It was exactly. And it was the day after leg day, so my legs walking through the fucking woods were like shaking just from horrible pain.
Oh God, no.
Like that. This is exactly what I want to be doing right now. I'm so glad we're doing this.
Yeah. That's stuff.
And today when I was walking, someone said he was going to murder me.
Yeah, you told me that.
Yeah, so I know this man has some sort of mental illness, so I kind of ignored it. But at the same time, I was like, well,
does he know where you live?
Yeah, he lives on my street.
Well, then you're dead.
Well, we have cameras at our house, and I'm the most paranoid person in the
world. And David has
a
pink baseball bat, so I'm sure you'll save.
I actually learned that it was red.
Oh, that's right. I always forget that you're colorblind.
It was my color blindness, and he was like, "It's red." Right. I was like, "Well, damn! Now I feel like I have to buy a pink one because I've been lying to people for like a whole year."
Everybody's gonna come over and look for the big baseball bat. Oh my God! Oh, I will. I'll have an update on this next week. But Samantha and I are going to specialists the day that this episode drops to talk about getting impregnated.
Yeah.
So
a little baby.
Setting up our sperm inoculation or whatever it is.
A little baby for me to spoil and teach all the horrible things and then be like, all right, bye, I'm leaving. Yeah, have fun with the little heathen.
Exactly. So that'll be fun. Anyways, we should get into our episode.
Today we're covering The Deadly Lovers, Ottis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas. Why don't you start this week?
Huh?
Why don't you start this week?
Okay, all right. So we're continuing our month of gore, bloodshed, and terror with a love story. That is,
because what's more beautiful than two gays loving and killing?
That's right. That's the dream, right?
That's the dream. This would actually make a great horror film.
I'm sure. It's half of it's been made. We'll talk about it.
I'm talking about
later.
the full thing. Like, you want a really good movie that's gonna sell, especially with I don't know. It would sell.
Today it would.
Today it
so
would sell.
the movie that was made, I think, in 2003. So this was right before the curve of really accepting
Today
queer.
this would sell like fucking hotcakes.
I'm sure it's
especially
gonna
if you
be.
put Taylor Swift in it.
What the fucking no? Let's see who plays this good. Oh god, I don't even know.
Pete Buttigieg.
Shut up.
You know,
No.
this is this cast. Pete
I don't
Buttigieg,
know.
Taylor Swift, Ellen,
You know
Todrick
who-
Hall.
Who I think I nobody's gonna see this, but I see this. I feel like Neil Patrick Harris could pull off Henry Lee Lucas, which if both of these men are incredibly ugly, but like I feel like he could do. I don't
Cast
know who
me.
would play.
I play that role
There
perfectly.
you go. There you go. Yeah. So
I can play both roles.
and just you're going back and forth and in love with yourself.
Yep.
Makes sense.
It's just me, and then like it cuts to me on the other side of the screen.
With just a wig on. Our low budget film. Support us on Patreon to get this movie going. All right, so it's a love story that is, if your definition of a love story is roaming the country while randomly, brutally, and mercilessly murdering people. For at least two men, this was the case. And those men were the infamous serial killing duo Ottis Toole, I heard it both ways, who
Definitely
really gives a
Otis.
fuck, Ottis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas. And we want to put in our standing October trigger warning here. This story will contain rape, incest, torture, and murder, including the harming of children and animals. So if you have no interest in this brutality, please check out our other episodes, such as Lucy Hicks Anderson, the black transgender businesswoman in the early 20th century. Or how about bisexual spy and worldwide entertainer Josephine Baker?
The only woman I have ever been attracted to.
Yeah, and in May we covered Mr. Spock himself, George Takei. So catch up on our past episodes or check out the blog on our website at yourqueerstory.com/blog. And for those of you who are still listening, it's about to get bloody in here.
I feel like we need like a little.
I think you should enter. Now it's too late. That last week's episode would have been perfect for you to put in a little scary
That's
like
extra
organ
work.
music. Yeah, exactly. He barely even edited the last
Listen,
episode, let alone.
I was busy, but I'm still here for you all.
Yeah.
On a warm. I had something in my throat.
Oh, Jesus.
On a warm day in Jacksonville, Florida, while waiting outside of a soup kitchen, two soulmates met for the first time. 29-year-old Ottis Toole towered above the older Henry Lee Lucas, who is 11 years Toole's senior. So see, you can still find love, everybody. Both men were gruff and dirty, with crooked teeth and darkness that seemed to radiate from their presence. Henry squinted slightly from his left eye, which was fake, and occasionally oozed with uncontrollable drainage. That's sexy.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if he ever took it out and like... Otis had thinning hair and a large gap in his front teeth, due in part to his horrible hygiene. But the two men must have sensed something in each other, because they were immediately drawn together as partners, both in love and in cruelty. Within weeks of meeting each other, Otis was sharing a bed with Henry. What would follow would be a crime spree that, if true, is one of the deadliest in history. But where did these men come from, and what truly drew them together?
And I couldn't find verification, so I only heard this fact once. But one thing that I heard was that Otis was he was dating a woman, and as soon as he met Henry, he like pushed her out of the house. He was like, "Okay, time for you to leave, honey." And Henry just like the day they met,
Wow.
that first day, by that evening they were sleeping
Well, you
together.
know what? That's kind of what happens when you find out that you're like, you know, you're gay or something. I mean, if you're older and you haven't experienced
Otis
it yet.
knew that he was gay for
okay.
a long time, but he had a lot of beards in his life.
Gotcha.
I mean, this was the
This was the one.
the 70s and 80s, so
Yeah,
he
yeah.
had beards in that. But then when he met Henry, he was like, "Fuck the beards,
Yeah.
this is my man," and that's
Smells
exactly
like
how.
cigarettes and sewage. Can't get much better.
Also, what I love about this, you know that voice we always do, we're like, "and anyways," where it's like slightly southern with the
Yeah.
list. That's exactly how Ottis Toole sounds. Like if you listen to his interviews, that's exactly how he sounds. So we're not being homophobic. That's how he sounds. Okay. Henry Lee Lucas was born on August 23rd, 1936 in Blacksburg, Virginia. His childhood was filled with abuse and neglect. Henry's father lost both his legs in a railroad accident, and as a means to support the family, Henry's mother, Viola, became a sex worker, which in itself would not have been a shame. But Viola's physical and sexual abuse of her son was tragic. She beat him regularly, once putting him in a 3-day coma, as well as forcing Henry to watch her have sex with her clients. She also forced him to wear girls' clothes, according to Henry, and shot his favorite pet, the family mule. One day she was mad and she just shot the mule. According to Henry, she also sexually abused him, forcing him to have sex with her and pinching and torturing his genitals when he misbehaved. It is most probable that Henry did suffer sexual abuse. However, we do need to state early on that both Henry and Ottis are liars who have made their names known through exaggerations and made up stories. So any information they give us is always to be taken with a grain of salt. And I can't stress that enough. As the story goes on, you'll see, yes, these were dangerous men and they were brutal men and they certainly must have had horrible childhoods. But they lie so much and so compulsively that it's really hard to distinguish what's true and what's not. Are you okay?
I'm good. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Sometime in his early teens, Henry's left eye was sliced with a knife by his brother. God damn, imagine that.
I know, right? Oh, and this was really bad. So it's sliced open and Viola doesn't do shit about it. She just lets him sit with it for 3 days. God, she doesn't do shit about it.
An infection set in, and the eye had to be removed and replaced with a glass one. But as it was the 1940s and the family was very poor, the eye was not set well, and as a result, Henry's tear duct would often leak involuntarily. Naturally, this deformity set Henry up for more ridicule around the neighborhood and amongst his family members. Shortly after the eye accident, around age 12 or 13, Henry ran away from home and began his life as a drifter. He claims to have committed his first murder at age 14 when he met 17-year-old Laura Burnsley at a bus stop and propositioned her. Laura turned him down, so Henry beat her, raped her, and then strangled her to death. He continued to drift around Virginia, claiming that during this time he took up a relationship with his half-brother. But in 1954, Henry was arrested for more than 12 counts of burglary and sentenced to 4 years in prison. He probably would have been released early had he not temporarily escaped in 1957. Instead, Henry remained locked up until 1959.
It's a weird thing because he actually escaped twice, but like one time he barely got off the premises. But another time he was gone for several days before they caught him. And so he's like, he's very much like a person who's street smart. Like he's very smart and calculating in that way. Could hardly read or write, but like very like
probably intuitive. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing about that I never understood about prison escape. If you got like 2 years left and you're like, man, I should just escape. If you get caught, you're going for like what, another like 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
Like just finish out you're going to get caught. There's no way you're going to escape from prison and just remain on the run. Like 1 or 2 people have ever done it in the United States.
It's true. It's true. Even Ted Bundy escaped prison and was sent back.
Right. Like you're going to get caught.
Even if you don't, you spend the entire rest of your life constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering when you're going to get caught. You can never settle down or put roots down. And like, if it's a life sentence, I get it. What do you have to lose?
Hell yeah!
Right?
If it was a life sentence, get the fuck out.
Yeah, but if it's a
don't
short
get out,
sentence,
but like that's what I would do.
But yeah, no, like life sentence, like fuck it, I'll try.
You're
but like
in there for life anyways.
4 years, just like fucking finish your sentence. What are you doing? I don't know. During this time in jail, Henry fell in love with one of his pen pals, and upon his release, Henry set about to marry the woman. But his mother, Viola, would have none of such nonsense. She insisted Henry come back home and take care of her. As the argument became heated, Henry claims Viola whacked him upside the head with a broom, to which he responded by stabbing her in the neck.
I mean, if his childhood was as bad as he said, then I don't blame him.
It's true. It's true. Like, you don't really feel bad for him. But I just love that he's trying to get away with, he's like, so she like hit me upside the head, and then I just stabbed her.
Naturally, that's what you do.
That's what you do. Or as Henry stated, all I remember was slapping her alongside the neck. But after I did that, I saw her fall and decided to grab her. But she fell to the floor, and when I went to pick her up, I realized she was dead. Then I noticed that I had my knife in my hand, and she had been cut.
Look, all I was trying to do, I was just trying to give her a little slap. I don't know how the knife got in my hand.
I just slapped her upside the neck with the knife like you do. Like you do when you want to get someone's attention. You slap them upside the head just with the knife. I don't know how it cut her.
I don't recall having the knife. I don't know how it got in my hand. I think Jesus must have put that there.
That's what I think. So Henry fled the scene, leaving his supposedly dead mother on the ground. However, Viola was not quite dead. Henry's... What?
Here's the thing I have to say about killing someone.
Good. Paul's life tips on how to be a criminal. Go ahead.
People, the amount of times somebody's thought someone's dead and they walk away. If you're not sure the job's done, you didn't do it.
That's true. Although
Finish
I will
your
say
work.
in this one, I really don't think he meant to kill her. I think he was angry and he did lash out in anger and he meant to stab her, but I don't think he meant to kill her.
Mm-hmm. Don't kill me though, but just some advice.
So Henry's half-sister, Opal, found Viola struggling to survive, and Opal called an ambulance. But on the way to the hospital, Viola died of a heart attack precipitated by the stabbing.
That fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Imagine you survive the stabbing and you have a fucking heart attack on the way.
Yep.
Bullshit.
Yeah, well, also fuck Viola. So
Yeah,
she
but
seemed
I'm
like
just
a horrible
saying,
person.
God.
But yeah, Henry was found guilty of second-degree murder, and in 1960 he was sentenced to over 20 years in prison.
I mean, technically he didn't kill her. The heart attack killed her, so that's why it was second degree.
Yeah.
Damn. As Lucas sat in prison, his lover was only 13 years old at the time. Young Ottis Toole was born on March 5th, 1947 in Jacksonville, Florida. Like Henry, Ottis also suffered horrific and abusive childhood. His father was a raging alcoholic and often absent, eventually abandoning the family altogether. His mother, on the other hand, turned to religion to soothe her pain and became a fanatic, using religion to justify her cruel beatings and neglect of her child, who's got to use the rod.
That's right.
Because of the abandonment of both parents, Ottis was prey to incest and abuse by other family members and friends. He recalls that as early as 5 years old, he was raped by one of his father's friends. He says, though, that the real abuse in his family started when he came out as gay around 10 years old. That's hard.
That is hard. And again, it's also hard to know. I can't believe that these men weren't horribly sexually abused, but like his story would change, and like by the end, his story was that his father and mother like pimped him out to their friends, and they were just passing him around and everything.
So it just became more and more grand over time.
Yeah. So it could have been true.
Who knows what level, Was it really this, or was it the passing around, or was it in between?
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, as you go through therapy, which in prison he did have to go to therapy, so he could have had more understanding. Or again, he also sold a lot of interviews and stuff. So
yeah,
who knows?
I mean, if you want to make money, sell your fucking story and make the story better, so more people want to buy it.
Exactly. So again, this could be true given the time period, the conservative area, and his mother's extreme religious fanaticism as far as them being more cruel to him after he came out as gay.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Toole says his mother forced him to wear dresses to church and called him Susan as a way to bully him for his orientation. But we do not know how much of this is true, as he continued to seek attention through lies until the day of his death. What we do know is that Ottis enjoyed cross-dressing throughout his life, and perhaps he felt guilty and needed a reason for what he perceived as deviancy. It is also interesting to note that Henry Lee Lucas also claimed to be dressed like a girl as a child, and the media's incredible attention to this detail. You cannot read or listen to anything about the two without this fact being mentioned. We certainly do not condone parents forcing a gender expression on a child, and absolutely call out the abuse of using it as a bullying tactic. But as a queer podcast, we also call out the homophobia and transphobia surrounding the marks and fixation on this fact.
Yeah, it's such a... It's so scandalous, right? It's like, oh my God, a boy in a dress.
Well, yeah, and the media really put it well, no wonder they murdered all those people.
Right.
I mean, look at how his mother dressed him up, and it's
Right.
ugh.
Also, I don't think that if the mother was in a religious cult and so heavily in the religion, she would dress him up in girls' clothing. I feel like she would try to hide it.
Exactly. It's kind of a weird thing, and Ottis did cross dress, so seems more likely that he was cross-dressing,
right?
And maybe he got caught, but then he flips it around as his mother dressed him up that way. She made him that way. She made him want to look like that,
Whatever the reason, things became unbearable at home, and Ottis ran away around the age of 12 or 13. It was at this time that he had his first relationship with a young neighborhood boy and began to visit the local gay bars. Oh my God.
What?
He was going to gay bars at
I know, right?
12 or 13. If I saw a 12 or 13-year-old in the bar, I would be like,
Christ.
you need, I'd be like, come sit over here with me. We're calling the police.
Well, we're talking
we need to
about,
get you somewhere.
We're
'cause
talking
you're not
about
in the right
today.
spot.
We're not talking about the 80s where bars are underground. The drinking age is 18.
You're right.
And if he's a 6'4" kid. So he could have passed as 18. And also, a lot of gay bars, I don't know, like, we don't know if they were serving him or not, but they also knew this was the only safe space for queer people.
Yeah, you're right.
We should look into it and see, what went on in gay bars at the time. So, yeah, but go ahead.
By 14, Otis had become a sex worker as a means to provide a living for himself, and it was through this work that Toole claims to have taken his first victim, a traveling salesman who Otis murdered after the man propositioned him for sex. According to Toole, the man took him to the woods, and when he got out of the car, Otis ran over him and left the man for dead. Over the next 12 years, the young man drifted all over the country from the southeast up to Nebraska and even to Colorado, crashing in abandoned houses and picking up work where he could. He had a love and sexual inclination for fire and developed skills as an arsonist. Throughout this time, he was arrested a few times on small charges, such as loitering, and was the prime suspect in 2 murders. But authorities didn't have enough evidence to arrest, and in the late 1970s, Otis headed back to Jacksonville.
During Otis's travels, Henry had been released early from prison due to overcrowding. This is after murdering his mother. After serving just 10 years for
he didn't murder his mother. She had a heart attack.
He slapped her with a knife.
And then, and she lived. It was the heart attack that killed her.
This is true. After serving just 10 years for his mother's murder, Henry walked free in 1970. He lasted 1 year before being sentenced to another 5 for trying to kidnap 3 young girls, which is... It's funny in the case of Henry, but it's not funny in like how the criminal institute like cripples people and makes them more prone to going back. But Henry Lee Lucas was also a creep and should have been locked up. Yeah. He's one of the few that should have like remained in prison forever. Once again, he fell in love with a pen pal, but this time he married her upon release in 1975. But the marriage fell apart when his wife found out that Henry had sexually abused her daughter. After splitting up, Henry took up with another woman, but just a few months later, the same incident played out. Only this time, the woman's entire family chased Henry out of West Virginia down to Florida. For all the jokes they make about West Virginia and like incest and rape, like you fuck over a family in West Virginia, you better run.
Yeah.
They're coming for you. Then he went down to Florida where Otis was himself just getting out of a 3-day marriage. According to court documents and the killer, he married a woman 25 years older than him. But while on their honeymoon, Otis revealed he was gay and she left him. So it seems really weird, but it just seems that like maybe he married this woman for money, or maybe he like was just seeking love and maybe like his own relationship with his mother. I don't know. But then on the honeymoon, he was like, by the way, honey, I'm gay.
I know we already married and everything, but I just have something to tell you.
I just got to drop this little bombshell. Toole would later say that he only went through with the marriage as a cover-up for his sexuality. But with no place to go, Otis headed to the local soup kitchen for some food, and there he met Henry.
Butterfly effects, people.
That's right.
These 2 people happen to meet by way different circumstances, and some crazy shit happened.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yep. Instantly, the 2 men seemed to hit it off, though it definitely was not a domesticated lover's paradise. Over the next 5 years, the men claimed to have murdered 1,008 victims, which is definitely not true.
Right.
The vast majority of which hold no evidence. And in fact, many claims have been proven to be outright lies. Still, there is definite certainty that they did rape, assault, and kill several people. Over the years, the men crossed 26 states and obtained countless victims. 2 main reasons they didn't get caught was their constant movement and the ways in which they mixed up their killings. Henry would later confess, I killed him every way there is except poison. There's been strangulations, there's been knifings, there's been shootings, and there's been hit and runs. The killer continued explaining how he trained Toole. He was doing his crimes all one way. Such an amateur. I started to correct him in his ways in doing the crime where he wouldn't leave any information.
Yeah, so it definitely seems that Otis was very much in love with Henry. And I think Henry, like if there was ever a sexual, not if there ever was, but like an example of an extreme sex addict would be Henry Lee Lucas. That's just my own diagnosis, but this man loves sex. I'm not saying that he wasn't bisexual. I'm just saying that like Otis was someone for him to fuck.
Yeah.
But Otis definitely loved Henry, like was in love with him. He had found his soulmate, and like they're both very warped people with very awful backgrounds. Yeah, they got each other. They clicked. So it worked. For years, the two men left a trail of unexplained deaths across the country. Most of the victims were sex workers and hitchhikers, many of whom were never identified. On the other hand, one victim was a prominent sheriff who was beaten with a tire iron and left in a convenience store. The victims ranged in ages, gender, and class, which meant authorities didn't tie the murders together. They didn't seem to have a rhyme or reason, and this was true because the only connection was the two lovers' obsession with killing. And it's like even in the same town, there would be 3 people dead, and the police wouldn't tie it together because it didn't make, like, one was a hit and run, and this one girl was strangled and raped in her house, and then the sheriff is beaten to death in a convenience store.
Right.
They couldn't be
all
connected.
From different walks of life, different colors, different sexualities. Like, if there's literally no common denominator, like, who would think that that's a serial killer? Like, that goes against all common serial killer logic.
Right. Yeah. So in addition to the rape, sexual assault, and murder, Ottis began to add cannibalism to his list of crimes. Henry says he never got on board with eating victims. Ottis disagrees. We do know from a secret recording of one of the men's conversations after their arrest that there was certainly cannibalism involved, a fact of which Ottis has played up heavily, offering to send people his recipe for human barbecue sauce free of charge.
Maybe a little nutmeg.
No, it includes, like, it's just barbecue sauce.
Did you look it up?
He talks about it.
Oh.
He's like, it's barbecue sauce with a little bit of human fat in it, and you just mix it together, let it sit, and you just pour that right on something.
Ugh. What do you think human tastes like?
Well, according to Ottis, it tastes the same as, like, oh God, it was some animal. Like, it wasn't, it was like chicken or pork or something like that. Mm-hmm. He's like, but he goes into real detail, and you can tell this is him playing it up. And
right,
he's like, most people can't tell the difference, but I'll tell you what, you give me the meat of a 14-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl, and I can tell the difference.
Yeah, just being real.
Yeah,
extra.
he goes into detail about how he gets his victims, like, primed up and ready, and how he cooks them, and just throw them on a spit roast. That's all you got to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But true love doesn't last forever, especially among moralist crooks. And soon, Ottis lost his lover to his 13-year-old niece.
Yeah. Ugh.
Damn. Reports vary as to how young Becky Frida Powell was when she and Lucas began their relationship, but we know she wasn't older than 13. For a brief time, both Becky and her younger brother
You're dying.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
You die. I'm pushing your body out of the room, and I'm continuing the podcast on my own.
Just don't let your dogs eat me.
Well, I can't promise that.
For a brief time, both Becky and her younger brother traveled with Lucas and Toole around on their murder spree. Becky's mother had allowed the kids to go off with their uncle and his friend.
Because that sounds like a great idea. Oh, yeah. Your uncle and his creepy friend? Absolutely.
You both smell like rot. You have no teeth. Your eyes oozing.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I think you both look respectable. Both children admit they were witnesses to a few murders. But when the mother died, Becky and her younger siblings were taken in as wards of the state. The young man, we could not find his name, remained in the state shelter, but Becky ran off with Henry, who reportedly simply walked into the shelter, grabbed Becky, and walked back out.
So, according to them, they went to the shelter where the kids were, and they went in and they asked both Becky and her brother if they wanted to go, and Becky was like, absolutely, I want to get out of here. And the brother was like, nah, I'm good.
I think you're both fucking insane.
I
don't want to watch
name.
people get murdered. I think I'm good here.
Yeah, I want to say his name was Frank. I don't know, but he was prominent when the men were arrested, and then he just faded from history.
He probably was like, I don't want any.
Oh yeah, he probably changed his name and I'm done with that part of my life. I don't want to hear about it anymore. And for good reason.
Absolutely. The two fled to Texas, leaving Ottis alone and betrayed. He later said he had to kill at least 9 people to blow off steam. It doesn't seem true that Ottis was always a lot more taken. It does seem true that Ottis was always a lot more taken with Henry than Henry was with Ottis.
Yeah. So down in Texas, things went south quickly.
Surprising.
Yeah, for the young girl. Okay, I should have read through them. Henry and Becky, who was by now 14 or 15, got a job as caretakers for an elderly woman. But they were released after a few months when the family claimed the two weren't doing their job properly and were in fact stealing from the old woman. The couple continued to drift until finding a commune where Henry found a job as a roofer. But Becky became homesick and began to argue with the much older Lucas, as teenagers tend to do.
Surprise, surprise.
That's why, there's so many reasons why you don't date a teenager, but what the fuck? Why would you even want to date a 14-year-old? Like, that's just so annoying.
It's only for the pedophilia value.
Yeah, it is only for that.
I would never even date like an 18-year-old because god damn.
I wouldn't date someone under 25 at this point.
I wouldn't either, but like I'm like just thinking like an 18-year-old. Fuck.
I told Samantha and I always talk, like when I was looking on my profile, like I had made a rule, I'm not dating. I think at the time I was like, I'm not dating anyone under 24. But Samantha had lied on her profile because she was afraid people were going to steal her birthday. And so I messaged her, and after we had our first couple dates, I found out she was actually younger than I thought, which she was only a year younger. So
Scam artist.
I know. That's how she wrote me in. But it's true, because if I had seen that she was 23, I'd been like, nah, I'm good. No, thank you. I do not do drama anymore. Oh, God. Okay, so, where am I at? So Becky began to complain, as teenagers do, and in a fit of rage, Henry murdered his rape victim and former lover's niece, dismembering Becky's body and scattering the parts around an empty field. Henry then returned to the house of the elderly woman who had employed the two drifters, telling her Becky had run away and asking for her help. Now, this is months after they've been released, so this is just pure anger and brutality. He lured the 82-year-old Kate Rich to a nearby field and murdered her, this time stuffing her body into a draining pipe.
Jesus.
Because of suspicion already aroused through his theft from the woman, Lucas became the prime suspect. Henry eluded the police for a few years, but in 1983 he was caught and processed for illegal possession of a firearm.
You'd be surprised how many criminals, like, they actually get them that way, and then they have them in jail and they can get all the other evidence for everything else.
Exactly, yeah.
After Becky and Henry had left him, Ottis became even more aggressive and deranged. In January of 82, Toole got in an argument with a 64-year-old gentleman named George Sonnenberg. Ottis managed to barricade the old man in his house and then lit the structure on fire, burning him alive, which is next to torture. That's probably got to be the worst way to go.
Yeah, that's an awful way.
He was arrested, tried, and sentenced to 20 years in prison. But just as that trial ended for Toole, another began, and in 1984, he was convicted of the murder of 19-year-old Ada Johnson. For this killing, Ottis received a life sentence. With both men behind bars, they could have faded into obscurity. However, another terrible trait the murderers shared was a love of the spotlight, and thus spent.
You gonna make it?
I'm not.
Do you have to pee?
No, I really don't.
Okay.
And thus both men. I told you I've been dizzy today. And thus both men sparked a decades-long confession spree, which shot them into the limelight and had police all across the country tracking them down. All across the country, tracking down thousands of false leads, eventually earning the two ex-lovers the title, the Confession Killers. I'm leaving all my mistakes in here. Y'all are going to go good.
This is the real Paul.
This is Paul when he's been dizzy all day.
I'm sorry. Why have you been dizzy?
I don't know.
Did you eat?
I probably got like amoebas from that river or something that I found.
Probably. Yeah. So, it's so ridiculous because they were both in prison for life sentences. And they would have just faded away. But instead, these guys are like, no, we're going to confess to everything. And everything.
To do in prison, right?
Exactly. That's basically what it was. So, and that's true. For like the next 10 years, they just start going off and off. So for 4 days after his illegal possessions charge and during his plea hearing, Henry abruptly confessed to the murder of Becky Powell and Kate Rich, along with 100 other murders. Like, he's on trial and they're like, all right, sir, so we have here that you are in illegal possession of a gun. And he's like, Your Honor, yes, I was. Also, I've killed 100 people. And they're like, like just
his
randomly
lawyer's sitting there like
okay.
Yes, I'm not getting paid.
Your Honor, if I could just confer with my client, please. He also incriminated his former partner and lover, Ottis Toole. Initially, Toole denied he had any part in the crimes, but his tune soon changed when he saw the notoriety and good treatment Henry was receiving. So like Henry was getting to go. I think I put it in here. All right, yeah. So by November, Henry had upped his claims to 210 murders, and police from all across the country began to visit his cell or fly him out to cold case crime scenes. Henry had the luxury of eating at restaurants, giving countless interviews, and leaving the prison often. He also could request all the little things like, I want a special pillow if I'm going to talk to you. And he'd get like, so all this stuff. Yeah. Otis wanted to get on the ride and soon began backing up Henry's claims. And it devolved into a pissing match. So Henry would be like, I've murdered 200 people. And Otis would be like, I've murdered 430. And Henry's like, I murdered 610. And Otis is like, I murdered. And like literally that's what they were doing. Like they kept until eventually, we'll say later, Henry confessed to 3,000 crimes.
But you just can't do that much. Like the most...
Well, that was the whole thing. Like people tracked out, they're like, it's physically impossible for you to have killed this many people in the time like when they were killed.
Right. I think the biggest one they just caught was like 90 people, and that was over like 40 years.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The biggest and most likely true bombshell that Toole dropped was the 1981 murder of Adam Walsh. The disappearance and murder of 6-year-old Adam Walsh was one of the biggest headlines of the 1980s, comparable today to perhaps the Casey Anthony story the Casey Anthony story, or 1990's John Benet Ramsey. The brutality that followed an everyday parental mishap crippled the nation. A mother left her son to try the new Atari game in Sears while she walked just a few aisles away. When she turned around, he was gone. A frantic search began and exploded into a 24-hour news cycle over the next few weeks as investigators and the parents pled with the kidnappers to return their son. After 2 weeks, the severed head of Adam Walsh was found in a drainage canal.
Yeah, there's a huge, huge story of the 80s, and it's really sad. You can still like watch the parents' interviews, and like even at one time the father's like my wife and I, whatever you want, we'll give you whatever you want. We'll trade ourselves for our son if you just please return our son. Toole's confession to Walsh's murder soon turned into taunts. He could no longer physically torment his victims on the outside, but other methods were at his disposal. He wrote letters to the press, Disney World. I don't know why he wrote to Disney World, but he did. And John Walsh, the father of Adam Walsh, boasting of how he had killed the young boy. So he wrote John Walsh this like detailed story. It's really awful.
Horrible fucking asshole.
Yeah. But due to a lack of DNA evidence, authorities did not feel comfortable convicting Toole of the crime. It wasn't until 2008, 27 years after the murder and more than a decade after Toole's death, that authorities finally claimed that he was the killer and closed the case. But aside from Adam Walsh's case, most of the confessions between Lucas and... This is you.
I know, you just kept going. This is the Evan Jones podcast now. Aside from Adam Walsh's case, most of the confessions between Lucas and Toole were fabrications, almost comical. Their biggest conspiracy was the Hand of Death, a supposed cult that instructed Henry and Otis to kill and... What?
Who to kill.
Oh, a supposed cult that instructed Henry and Otis who to kill and was the real criminal behind their actions. According to Henry, he had killed Jimmy Hoffa and supplied the poison to the Jonestown Massacre in Ghana, South America. He led police all over the country to false grave sites, even once having them dig up an entire portion of the highway only to find nothing. God. But every time authorities were just about done with Henry Lee Lucas, he'd lead them to a real gravesite and give specific details to a murder only the killer would know. Toole often did the same thing, though he wasn't quite the celebrity as Lucas. Once, after a long confession to the murder of a woman, authorities pointed out that another man had already confessed to the crime, to which Otis simply replied, "Okay, if you say I didn't kill her, maybe I didn't." In an interview, Otis also compared the slaughter of people to the slaughter of animals. Ain't no difference. If you stomp a bug, you killed something. If you kill a hog, you killed something. Ain't no different killing people. God.
Yeah, right. He really did have that mindset, though. I do love that Henry Lee Lucas took credit for killing Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah.
And also smuggling poison to fucking Jonestown. He's like, and I did that too. I killed all those 900 people.
You know, he really thought it was just Kool-Aid. I'm the one who went. I put the poison in the Kool-Aid. Nobody else knew.
Exactly. It was like any famous crime over the last like 20 years, Henry Lee Lucas was like, I did it. Mm-hmm. Like they started taking, Toole took credit for a couple of Ted Bundy's crimes. He's like, they say that Ted killed her, but he didn't kill her. I did. It's just like, Okay. In total, Lucas confessed to over 3,000 murders, but was convicted of only 9, though police believe that there were probably close to 100. Toole was convicted of 6, though as many as 60 plus have been attributed to him. And though the men were not convicted of all the crimes, police closed a total of 213 cold cases with the assumption that they were committed by the 2 men. Some have since been refuted, but a large majority still hold that Ottis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas were, or at least could be, the killers. The 2 men would remain in contact through phone calls for several years. But later in life, Henry would find God and become...
Oh my God, are you surprised?
Right?
God is forgiving. It doesn't matter what you do. As long as you're not gay, you can come to God. And
Yeah.
he will fix everything.
Amen. Amen. Oh, yeah. He became a poster boy for the religious right. Like, it was a big deal that Henry Lee Lucas had been saved. It's kind of like today, like people talk about the son of Sam, how he's been saved and changed. Like, that was Henry Lee Lucas. He recanted all of his confessions except for the killing of his mother. And he also adamantly denied that he had ever molested or hurt a child, which is utter bullshit because there were so many witnesses.
I mean, they probably just moved him to a different state.
Huh?
Just like they do the priest. It's fine.
That's right.
Just move him to a different
around.
state.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody will ever know.
If you're moved, then it's like you never did it.
Right?
And interesting enough, the only time George W. Bush ever commuted a death sentence to a life sentence was for Reformed Christian Henry Lee Lucas. All the people that have been murdered in Texas, the only one was the new Christian. And George W. Bush is like, you know what? I think he probably has changed. Still, Henry knew that there was no hope of ever getting out. He told an LA Times reporter, "This life is gone. Maybe God will find something. I've left it in his hands. I just have to accept it."
Otis thought Henry's recantations were ridiculous and continued to give salacious stories to the press until his death in 1996. He died of cirrhosis, having been a hard alcoholic just like his father. Henry followed 5 years later in 2001, dying of heart failure. He was buried in an unmarked grave for fear of vandalism. As far as the homophobia one would suspect surrounding this case, it was much more subtle than for other queer killers. Inexplicably,
Yeah,
I don't know why I can't say that. Though inexplicably, Jeffrey Dahmer was tied to Ottis Toole, with people claiming the two knew each other.
you know all the gays know each other.
Yeah, hello. I have this gay coworker. You probably know him. His name is this. And you're like, no, I've not. No, you've definitely.
Frank. It's Frank. You've met Frank. Come on. He goes to that one gay bar in downtown.
You know, the one of like the 6 that you go to every night. Apparently,
he's got brown hair, and he's
Blue
a little
eyes,
effeminate. You're like,
sorry, you just described 90% Providence.
Exactly. Yeah.
This was also the fact them knowing each other was also due to the strong theory that Dahmer had been connected to the Walsh murder, a theory that had no evidence and which even the father denied. We aren't saying that homophobia didn't persist. Just look at the way Henry was treated by cops versus Otis.
Yeah.
Merely that there wasn't the media evidence usually so prevalent in these cases. Yes, both men were labeled as sex deviants, but in this case, it was true, and it is hard to know if reporters were referring to their mass rape and assaults or their affair or both. What we do know is that the world is slightly safer without Henry and Otis roaming the streets in search of prey.
So what I just put in there is like I expected to find all this like these articles that were really aggressively homophobic. Yeah. And I didn't find that, but you do find the way. So Otis was a lot of people said he was swishy. He was swishy gay. He was open about the fact that he was gay. He was effeminate. And Henry, on the other hand, and Otis had not really ever been with women except for beards, and he was very open about the fact that he only was with them as a cover-up. Henry was bisexual, and especially when he got saved and recanted of all his sins, and he even recanted of his homosexuality. He said he was sorry of it. Like, he didn't lie and say he wasn't homosexual, like he lied about saying he was a pedophile, but he recanted of his homosexuality. But the way people treated Otis was so much different. It was so much harsher. The way the cops treated him,
right?
And whereas everybody seemed to have patience. Like, I wonder if George W. Bush would have commuted Otis's life sentence instead of Henry's, right? So that's what I mean. Like, the homophobia was there in those ways. you know, but as far as like, but when people would write about them being sex deviants, they were sex deviants. Like that's what a sex deviant actually is.
Right.
You know,
they were raping and murdering people.
Exactly.
A little bit different than just being gay.
Yeah. So it's hard to know, like, are you writing because they're really sex deviant? Are you writing because like, are you being negative because they're homosexual? Like it was all together. So anyways, your recommended resource is the documentary Ottis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas, available on YouTube. It's under Serial Killers Documentaries, or the book Henry Lee Lucas by Joel Norris. We don't have a good book recommendation for Ottis Toole, as Evan tried a few and they were all awful, and I am not lying. One book that I was reading, I was listening to it and I like had to turn it off because it was so pornographic. I was like, I'm working and I can't be listening to this. And this is ridiculous. It's like so fucking stupid. Like, I don't know.
Podcast is like,
sorry, I'm smacking the table. But like, it was an awful book. I listened to 2.
It's like audible pornography.
Literally, that's what it was. The writer was trying to be like a fancy true crime writer where like he tells the true history, but like in a novel way, which is good. I like that. But he did it in this. I'm sorry. I just did not like it. I did not like it. And it took too many liberties. And like at the end, I was like, I don't know if this is true or what this is. I don't know. So anyways, however, there are some great episodes on various true crime podcasts, such as Criminal Musings, which is hosted by our friend JV Hampton Van Sant. Sorry, JV, if I said your last name wrong. Van Sant. JV is a queer black person who hosts several podcasts, but specifically covers true crime as it pertains to queer people and people of color. So check them out and send some love to the podcast Criminal Musings. JV does a lot of podcasts.
They've got like 30, I think.
Yeah, they've got a lot. They interviewed us over a year ago now.
Yeah, it's been a while. It was kind of towards the beginning.
Yeah, well, they interviewed us over a year ago, but then the episode didn't drop for a little while because they also have a podcast where they interview other people who are podcasters.
Right.
So, but JV's got a lot of stuff. You can check it out. Criminal Musings. And of course, any good true crime podcast has got something about Ottis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas.
So stay queer.
Don't get a lobotomy.
We love you, our little allied hookers.
A little succulent sapphis.
And our proud homocrats.
And have a sodomy circus.
Bye.
Bye.